They ignored my warning and woke up to $3 million in flood damage. Rex Thornfield's boots squelched through ankle-deep mud across what used to be pristine meadows, pristine streets. Around him, $600,000 homes sat like expensive boats run ground. Foundations stained with Mother Nature's revenge. But this wasn't just about environmental law. It was about Emma, his 8-year-old daughter, who'd sobbed watching bulldozers crush her favorite frogs and turtles. She'd trusted Daddy to keep them safe forever. Meet Rex, environmental engineer and weekend father who tried saving his neighbors from themselves. And meet Cordelia Blackthorne, board chair, who dismissed federal environmental law like optional paperwork. Here's what happened. Cordelia's husband rushed a road through Emma's beloved wetlands in 72 hours. One tropical storm later, 23 homes flooded, 2.80 cents, $8 million in damage, and one satisfied father planning to buy Cordelia's house. The smell of moldy drywall now perfumed streets where Emma once counted salamanders. What would you do if your HOA bulldozed through federal law and flooded your street? Drop A if you're watching from anywhere that floods. This story proves why environmental laws exist. Rex Thornfield never planned to become the neighborhood environmental vigilante. The sound of cardinals chirping outside his new bedroom window seemed like a good omen 6 months earlier, back when he thought pristine meadows would actually live up to its name. After 20 years designing sustainable water management systems across the Southeast, Rex had chosen this particular Georgia subdivision for one reason: the 40-acre protected wetlands preserve. Following a messy divorce that left him starting over at 52, he wanted peace, quiet, and maybe some great blue herons for company. But the real reason Rex had chosen this house wasn't just the heron. It was Emma. After the divorce, their weekend custody visits always included frog hunting expeditions in the preserve. Emma, 8 years old with pigtails and rubber boots, had named every turtle and knew which pools housed the magic salamanders that only appeared in spring. The sound of her laughter echoing across those ancient waters had helped heal both their hearts after Mommy moved away. Emma called it Daddy's secret kingdom, where animals were safe forever. She'd made him promise to protect the frogs and turtles, even from mean people. That promise would soon be tested in ways Rex never imagined. His modest $420,000 ranch house offered wetlands views where endangered spotted salamanders bred in pools older than the state itself. The morning mist rising from these ancient waters carried the earthy scent of centuries-old cypress and the soft plop of turtles diving for cover. The HOA fees ran $280 monthly for landscaping and environmental stewardship, a phrase that would later make him laugh bitterly. Rex's first red flag came wrapped in gardenias and condescension at the new resident orientation. He'd mentioned his environmental engineering background, thinking it might help with conservation efforts. Cordelia Blackthorne's response could have frozen hell. "We prefer residents who appreciate progress over red tape." Mr. Thornfield, the woman's perfume, overpowering gardenias masking cigarette smoke, seemed designed to announce her presence 3 rooms away. At 58, she commanded the HOA like a deposed Southern belle, who'd traded charm for raw power. Her rigid posture suggested someone accustomed to getting her way through whatever means necessary. Rex learned Cordelia's history through neighborhood gossip, served with sweet tea and bitter truth. Former Millbrook County councilwoman until developer kickback scandals forced her resignation 2 years earlier. The corruption investigation had made regional headlines, though charges never stuck thanks to high-priced Atlanta attorneys and convenient memory lapses among key witnesses. Now she ruled from her $780,000 colonial, the neighborhood's crown jewel that looked down on lesser mortals like a plantation mansion surveying the fields. The house featured a circular driveway, imported Italian marble, and security cameras that seemed to monitor more than just her own property. Her husband owned Blackthorn Construction, which had built half the subdivision and maintained suspiciously lucrative contracts for all community improvements. Talk about keeping business in the family, though Rex suspected the real family business was extracting maximum profit from captive neighbors. The 127-home development attracted families earning $80,000 to $200,000. Young professionals commuting to Atlanta, retirees enjoying maintenance-free living, everyone thrilled that property values had climbed 15% in 3 years. Most residents had never heard terms like Clean Water Act or jurisdictional wetlands and preferred staying ignorant of such complications. Rex's morning routine included wetlands walks where he documented wildlife with engineering precision. The crunch of autumn leaves underfoot reminded him why he'd chosen this sanctuary. Migrating warblers stopped here during spring and fall journeys. Native orchids bloomed in secret spots, known only to deer and dedicated naturalists. Everything felt balanced, natural, protected by federal law and community covenant. The preserve had been designated protected habitat since 1987, with clear restrictions in every property deed. Rex had specifically researched this before buying, ensuring his investment aligned with his values. Then the orange survey stakes appeared like geometric cancer throughout the preserve, and Rex realized his promise to Emma would be tested by forces that viewed endangered salamanders as inconvenient obstacles to suburban progress. The diesel fuel smell from surveying equipment was already seeping through his windows when he tried sleeping that night. 3 weeks later, Cordelia dropped her bombshell at the December HOA meeting with the theatrical flair of a politician announcing tax cuts. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm thrilled to present our Connectivity Improvement Project, a beautiful new road linking our community directly to Millbrook Shopping Center. The room erupted in excited murmurs. Parents calculated shorter drives to soccer practice. Retirees imagined easier access to the pharmacy. Everyone saw dollar signs as property values would surely climb with improved convenience. The scent of Cordelia's victory perfume seemed stronger tonight. Gardenias mixed with a metallic tang of ambition. Rex's stomach dropped like a stone in those very wetlands Cordelia planned to pave. This road will reduce commute times by 47% according to our traffic study, Cordelia continued, producing a glossy folder thick enough to stop bullets. Construction begins January 15th, just 30 days away. Rex's hand shot up faster than a rocket launch. Where exactly does this road go? Cordelia's smile could have powered Atlanta. The most efficient route crosses the southeastern portion of our preserve, minimizing impact while maximizing benefit. The southeastern portion. Rex knew every inch of that area. It contained the deepest seasonal pools where salamanders had bred for generations and where Emma had named her favorite turtles. It was also the exact center of federally protected wetlands. Have environmental impact studies been completed? Rex asked, his engineering training keeping his voice steady despite his racing pulse. Mr. Thornfield, we've consulted extensively with local authorities, Cordelia replied, waving dismissively. This project represents progress, not problems. Local authorities. Rex noted she didn't mention federal agencies, the ones that actually mattered for wetlands protection. His years working with the Army Corps of Engineers flooded back. He remembered countless projects delayed for months while waiting for something called 404 permits. The federal government didn't mess around when it came to wetlands violations, with fines reaching $37,500 per day for unauthorized construction. The next morning brought Emma for their weekend custody visit, and the sight that broke both their hearts. Orange stakes dotted her beloved frog kingdom like grave markers. "Daddy, why are there sticks in the turtle pools?" she asked, her small hand trembling in his. Rex knelt beside her, choosing words carefully. "Some people want to build a road here, sweetheart." Emma's eyes filled with tears. "But you promised the animals would be safe forever." The next morning, Rex drove to Millbrook County's planning office, a beige building that smelled like old coffee and bureaucratic despair. After 3 hours searching permit databases, he discovered exactly what he'd suspected. No applications filed for wetlands crossing permits, no environmental impact assessments, no federal consultations whatsoever. "You can't just decide to build through wetlands," Rex thought grimly, "any more than you can decide to build through your neighbor's living room." Those 404 permits existed for good reason. They typically required 18 to 24 months of environmental studies before the first shovel touched protected soil. Rex spent his weekend researching the original neighborhood covenants at the courthouse, a musty repository where property dreams went to be documented. What he found in the 1987 master deed made his pulse quicken. Explicit environmental protection clauses prohibiting any development, grading, or alteration of natural drainage patterns in the preserve. Armed with federal law and community covenants, Rex called an emergency HOA meeting for the following Tuesday. The conference room felt smaller, with tension thick enough to cut with Cordelia's manicured nails. "I've researched this road project," Rex announced, spreading documents across the table like a poker player, revealing a royal flush. Federal law requires environmental impact studies before any construction in protected wetlands. This process takes minimum 18 months, not 30 days. Cordelia leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled like a spider contemplating its web. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like agitated wasps. "Mr. Thornfield seems more concerned with swamp creatures than neighbors' convenience." Laughter rippled through the room. She'd perfectly pitched her response to the audience. Rex felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes judging him as the neighborhood killjoy who valued salamanders over convenience. "These aren't just swamp creatures," Rex replied, his voice gaining strength. "We're talking about endangered species protected by federal law. Violations carry fines up to $3,750 per day." "Per day?" squeaked Gladys Petton, the 73-year-old board treasurer who'd been quietly crunching numbers on her calculator. Cordelia steamrolled ahead like a bulldozer through environmental regulations. "Local environmental experts have assured us this project poses no significant impact. We have traffic studies proving 47% commute reduction. Property values could increase $50,000 per home." The room's energy shifted back toward Cordelia as neighbors calculated mortgage improvements versus environmental concerns. Money talked louder than salamanders, apparently. "I'm calling for an emergency board vote," Cordelia announced, "all in favor of proceeding with the connectivity project as scheduled." 4 hands rose immediately. Only Gladys abstained, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else, possibly in one of those endangered salamander pools. Rex realized he was watching a masterclass in political manipulation. Cordelia had framed environmental protection as anti-neighbor's selfishness, while positioning herself as the champion of progress and prosperity. "Motion carries," Cordelia declared triumphantly. "Mr. Thornfield, I hope you'll support what's best for our community." Rex left that meeting understanding he'd entered a chess match against a grandmaster who'd already mapped out her victory. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd assumed he'd fold under social pressure. The next morning, Rex's coffee mug nearly slipped from his hands when he spotted construction equipment already being staged at the preserve's edge. Cordelia wasn't waiting for January 15th. She was creating facts on the ground to prevent opposition. The sound of diesel engines warming up carried across the wetlands like mechanical thunder, drowning out the morning bird songs that had welcomed him and Emma to this neighborhood. Monday morning arrived with the roar of heavy machinery that made Rex's coffee taste like motor oil. Blackthorn construction crews had materialized at dawn with the efficiency of an occupying army. Bulldozers, excavators, and dump trucks lined up like mechanical dinosaurs ready to feast on protected habitat. Rex grabbed his camera and documentation folder, determined to create an evidence trail that would make federal prosecutors weep with joy. What he photographed over the next 3 hours violated so many environmental regulations he lost count. No erosion barriers, no sediment fences, no environmental monitors. The crew was attacking wetlands like they were paving a Walmart parking lot. Emma was with Rex the morning bulldozers began destroying her frog kingdom. The sound of her sobbing, "Daddy, they're squishing my turtle friends," echoed across the wetlands louder than diesel engines. Rex held his crying daughter while watching centuries-old salamander pools disappear under concrete. The metallic taste of fury filled his mouth as Emma asked through tears, "Did we fail the animals, Daddy?" That night, Rex made a decision that would change everything. This wasn't just about environmental law anymore. This was war. The acrid smell of disturbed wetland sediment, centuries of decomposed organic matter now exposed to air, began drifting toward the neighborhood like nature's own tear gas. Rex fired off his first salvo that afternoon, sending certified letters to the EPA Region 4 office in Atlanta and the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. His formal complaint included GPS coordinates, photographic evidence, and a detailed timeline showing Cordelia's rush to bypass federal permitting. Cordelia's retaliation arrived faster than Amazon Prime delivery. Tuesday morning brought the first HOA violation notice tucked under his windshield wiper, like a parking ticket from hell. Unauthorized garden structure detected on property. Bird bath exceeds height restrictions per Community Covenant Section 12.4 billions. Fine $150. Wednesday delivered violation number 2. Non-compliant fence height measured at rear property line, another $150. Thursday's special was improper mailbox positioning must be precisely 42% in from curb per postal regulations. Rex measured his mailbox. It sat at 41.5 in. The metallic taste of fury filled his mouth as he realized he'd apparently committed the cardinal sin of being half an inch off perfect compliance. Another $150. The woman was nickeling and dying him to death while bulldozing through federal environmental law. You had to admire the audacity, even while wanting to strangle her with her own garden club membership ribbon. Friday brought his first potential ally when Gladys Peaton knocked on his door carrying homemade banana bread and a worried expression. The sweet scent of cinnamon couldn't mask the fear in her eyes. "Rex, I need to tell you something," she whispered, glancing around like CIA agents might be lurking behind his ayelas. "Cordelia threatened me after that board meeting. Said if I kept asking questions about finances, she'd challenge my deed restrictions. Apparently my corner lot violates some obscure setback requirement from 1987. Rex invited her inside, noting how Gladys's hand shook slightly as she poured cream into her coffee. The elderly woman owned the most valuable corner lot in the neighborhood, worth nearly $100,000 more than comparable homes, because of its prime location. If Cordelia could force a deed challenge, Gladys might lose everything. She's been systematically intimidating anyone who might oppose her. Gladys continued. The Hendersons asked about environmental studies 2 weeks ago. Suddenly, their teenage son got cited for excessive noise violations for practicing guitar after 7 p.m. The Patel family questioned construction costs. Now, they're getting weekly inspections for potential landscape violations. Rex felt pieces clicking into place. Cordelia wasn't just bulldozing wetlands, she was bulldozing neighbors into submission through bureaucratic terrorism. Meanwhile, environmental destruction accelerated with the precision of a Swiss watch. Construction sediment was filling seasonal pools that had supported endangered species since the Plein era. Each evening, Rex documented dead fish floating in Millbrook Creek downstream from the construction site. The local newspaper ran a puff piece that Friday. HOA modernizes aging infrastructure for community benefit. The article featured Cordelia in hard hat and pearls, standing next to a future site of connectivity improvement sign. Rex appeared in a smaller photo, looking stern, beside a wetlands protected marker described as a disgruntled newcomer resistant to neighborhood progress. She'd played the media like a virtuoso violinist, casting herself as the forward-thinking community leader while painting him as the obstructionist outsider. Rex called the EPA emergency hotline that weekend, hoping federal cavalry might ride to the rescue. The response crushed his optimism. Inspectors couldn't visit until Tuesday due to budget constraints and scheduling conflicts. By Tuesday, Cordelia's crews would have the road foundation poured and half the wetlands filled with concrete. But Sunday night brought a discovery that changed everything. Rex's motion-activated trail cameras captured something extraordinary. Cordelia's crews weren't just working weekends, they were working around the clock. Massive concrete pours happening under floodlights while neighbors slept peacefully in their beds. By Monday morning, 200 yards of roadway stretched across the wetland's core, like a concrete scar through paradise. But Rex had evidence of something potentially criminal. Deliberate 247 construction designed to bypass federal oversight. The grinding sound of concrete mixers at 3 a.m. had become his new alarm clock, a mechanical lullaby celebrating environmental destruction that would make excellent evidence in federal court. Tuesday morning brought the federal cavalry, but Cordelia had prepared for this battle like a general defending her last stronghold. EPA Inspector Janet Clearwater arrived at 9 a.m. sharp, driving a white government sedan that screamed environmental compliance nightmare to anyone with half a brain. The metallic slam of her car door echoed across the neighborhood like a gunshot at dawn. Rex watched from his kitchen window as Cordelia intercepted the inspector, before she'd even straightened her government-issued blazer, clipboard in hand, and smile locked and loaded. "Welcome to Pristine Meadows," Cordelia gushed, extending her hand like a southern hostess greeting dinner guests. "I'm Cordelia Blackthorne, OA Board Chair. We're so pleased you're here to confirm our project's environmental soundness." Rex grabbed his evidence folder and practically sprinted across the street, his boots crunching on gravel that hadn't been there a week ago. Construction debris now decorated what used to be pristine lawns. "As you can see, our connectivity improvement crosses only previously disturbed land," Cordelia explained, gesturing toward the concrete road now bisecting what had been pristine wetlands 72 hours earlier. "We have comprehensive soil surveys from 2019 confirming no sensitive habitat existed here." She produced a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse, falsified documentation that probably costs more than Rex's monthly mortgage, and looked suspiciously professional for something supposedly prepared by local contractors. "Actually," Rex interrupted, "I have 8 months of wildlife photography, proving active wetlands right where that road sits." He spread his evidence across the hood of the EPA vehicle, like a car dealer working Vegas. GPS-coordinated photos showed endangered salamanders, seasonal pools, and protected vegetation, all taken at the exact coordinates now buried under concrete. Inspector Clearwater examined both sets of documentation with the poker face of someone who'd investigated environmental crimes from Florida Everglades to Alaska's North Slope. The morning sun glinted off her wire-rimmed glasses as she compared Rex's time-stamped photos with Cordelia's mysterious soil survey. These GPS coordinates match federal wetlands inventory data, Clearwater noted, tapping Rex's photographs. "Mrs. Blackthorne, where exactly did this 2019 soil survey take place?" Cordelia's smile flickered like a light bulb about to burn out. "Our environmental consultants assured us of full compliance with all applicable regulations." "Which consultants?" Clearwater pressed. "Blackthorne Environmental Services," Cordelia replied without missing a beat. Rex nearly choked on his morning coffee. "That's your husband's company. You surveyed yourselves?" The inspector's eyebrows rose toward her government-issued hairline. In Rex's experience working with federal agencies, nothing made regulators happier than discovering obvious conflicts of interest, wrapped in obvious lies, tied with a bow of environmental destruction. That afternoon brought an emergency OA meeting that felt more like a town hall lynch mob. Cordelia had spent the morning working the phones, and the conference room buzzed with angry voices before Rex even arrived. The smell of instant coffee and simmering resentment filled the air thicker than construction dust. "Thanks to Mr. Thornfield's harassment campaign, we now face federal investigation," Cordelia announced, her voice dripping with martyred righteousness. "His frivolous EPA complaint threatens our community improvement project and could result in costly legal fees for everyone." Neighbors turned to stare at Rex like he'd personally stolen Christmas, Easter, and their children's college funds. "I propose a special assessment of $1,800 per household to fund our legal defense against these baseless environmental allegations," Cordelia continued. "We cannot allow outside interference to destroy our property values and community progress." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Young families couldn't afford surprise $2,800 bills. Retirees on fixed incomes looked physically ill. Several parents whose children had developed mysterious respiratory problems since construction began suddenly seemed less enthusiastic about progress that came with hospital visits. Rex realized Cordelia was playing psychological warfare, making him the villain responsible for everyone's financial pain, while positioning herself as the victim of federal overreach. The woman understood neighborhood politics better than most campaign managers. "These aren't baseless allegations," Rex countered, standing to address the room. "Federal law requires permits before disturbing wetlands. Your board chair rushed construction to avoid compliance, and now we're all paying the price. Mr. Thornfield seems determined to bankrupt our community over swamp water," Cordelia replied smoothly. "Some of us believe neighbors matter more than salamanders, but cracks were forming in Cordelia's coalition like fissures in a dam under pressure." Mrs. Henderson raised her hand tentatively. "My son's asthma has gotten worse since construction started. Could there be a connection?" Dr. Marcus Webb, a retired hydrogeologist living on Pine Street, cleared his throat with the authority of someone who'd spent decades studying water systems. "I've been monitoring water quality downstream. We're seeing fish kills and elevated sediment levels that suggest significant environmental disruption." "These so-called experts are fear-mongering," Cordelia shot back, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Our project follows all local guidelines. Local guidelines don't override federal environmental law," Dr. Webb replied calmly. "When migratory birds use isolated wetlands, those areas receive the same federal protection as the Mississippi River." That night, Rex's phone buzzed with a weather alert that made his engineering blood run cold. Tropical Storm Helena was rapidly strengthening in the Gulf of Mexico, with the National Weather Service upgrading their weekend forecast to unprecedented rainfall amounts, potentially historic flooding event. Rex grabbed his calculator and started running numbers that terrified him. Cordelia's road had eliminated the neighborhood's natural flood protection just as Mother Nature prepared to send the biggest bill of the century. The timing was so catastrophically perfect, it felt like cosmic justice. Wednesday morning brought Rex to the Millbrook County Courthouse with the determination of a man who'd run out of conventional weapons. If Cordelia wanted to play hardball with environmental law, he'd show her what a real curveball looked like. The courthouse basement smelled like old paper, forgotten dreams, and that peculiar mustustiness that comes from decades of legal documents slowly decomposing in Georgia humidity. Rex had spent enough time researching property titles during his engineering career to know where bodies were buried. Legally speaking, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead like mechanical insects while he pulled dusty volumes from metal shelves. He started with the 1987 Master Deed, the foundational document that had originally created Pristine Meadows subdivision. What he found in Section 12 made his hands shake with excitement and terror in equal measure. Permanent conservation easement. The southeastern 40 acres of said property shall remain in perpetual conservation status as recorded with the Georgia Nature Conservancy. Document number GNC 19,870,847. Said easement prohibits any development, grading, or alteration of natural drainage patterns in perpetuity. Rex read the paragraph 3 times to make sure his tired eyes weren't playing tricks. The musty air seemed to thicken as he cross-referenced document number GANC 19,870,847 and felt his world tilt on its axis like a carnival ride operated by drunk teenagers. The conservation easement wasn't just some environmental feel-good measure. It was a legal nuclear bomb with a 36-year fuse. The original developer had donated the wetlands to the Georgia Nature Conservancy for a $400,000 tax write-off, permanently restricting development rights on that exact land where Cordelia's Road now sat like a concrete middle finger to federal law. But here's where it got truly terrifying. Rex remembered from his property law courses that conservation easements run with the land. They legally bind all future property owners forever, like environmental herpes that never goes away. If the easement was violated, every single property deed in pristine meadows could be declared invalid. Rex grabbed his phone and called environmental attorney Samantha Hartwell, a colleague from his consulting days who specialized in exactly these kinds of legal landmines. "Rex, please tell me you're calling about something simple like a permit dispute," Samantha said after hearing his breathless summary. "I wish. How bad is easement violation for property owners? Biblical apocalypse bad. If a conservation easement gets voided due to violation, title insurance becomes worthless toilet paper. Mortgage companies can demand immediate full payment on every loan. The Nature Conservancy could technically claim ownership of the entire subdivision and evict everyone." Rex felt his morning coffee turn to battery acid in his stomach. All 127 homes, every single one, including yours. "Rex, you're sitting on information that could bankrupt your entire neighborhood. The legal term is quiet title action. If no one enforces the easement within the statute of limitations, violations might get overlooked. But you have maybe 30 days before that window slams shut forever." Rex hung up, feeling like he just discovered he was holding a live grenade while standing in a room full of his neighbor's children. He could destroy Cordelia's illegal road project, but the collateral damage would include every innocent family in the subdivision. Elderly couples like Gladys would lose their life savings. Young families would face immediate foreclosure. Kids would lose their childhood homes because adults couldn't follow environmental law. The moral weight pressed down on his shoulders like wet concrete. He spent the rest of Wednesday researching the Georgia Nature Conservancy's contact information. The taste of guilt metallic in his mouth. The organization's legal department seemed genuinely shocked to learn about the easement violation. Apparently, they'd lost track of the 1987 document during organizational restructuring in the 1990s. "Mr. Thornfield will need to review this immediately," said staff attorney Rebecca Morrison. "If the easement is being violated, we have legal obligations to enforce it, regardless of consequences to current homeowners." Rex made a decision that surprised him. "Give me 2 weeks before you take action. I want to try resolving this without destroying innocent people's lives." That night, Rex sat on his back porch, listening to the relentless grinding of nighttime construction. Cordelia's crews were still working around the clock to complete their environmental crime before federal oversight arrived. Rex now held the ultimate trump card, information that could void every property deed in the neighborhood. The question was whether he had the stomach to detonate a legal nuclear weapon to save endangered salamanders. Thursday morning found Rex drinking coffee that tasted like determination mixed with desperation, while mapping out a strategy that would make Sun Tzu proud. The bitter liquid seemed appropriate for planning warfare against his own HOA. Sometimes life required acquiring tastes for unpleasant necessities. His first call went to attorney Samantha Hartwell, who agreed to file a preliminary injunction motion in federal court to halt construction immediately. The strategy was surgical. Stop the bleeding first, then address the underlying legal cancer of easement violation later. I'll need your expert witness affidavit documenting environmental damage, Samantha explained, her voice crackling through the phone with the energy of a lawyer who smelled blood in the water. Federal judges love technical evidence from qualified engineers who can explain complex violations in simple terms. Rex spent the morning crafting an affidavit that read like an environmental autopsy report. Destroyed salamander breeding pools, contaminated downstream water supplies, violated Federal Clean Water Act protections. Each paragraph documented another environmental crime with GPS coordinates and photographic evidence that would make EPA investigators weep with prosecutorial joy. The metallic screech of construction equipment outside his window provided an oddly motivating soundtrack for legal warfare preparation. The afternoon brought an unexpected ally when Dr. Marcus Webb knocked on Rex's door carrying a laptop and the kind of grim expression geologists wore when discussing impending disasters. The scent of rain hung heavy in the air. Nature seemed to sense what was coming. "Rex, I've run hydrological models on what Cordelia's Road has done to our natural drainage," Dr. Webb announced, spreading printouts across Rex's kitchen table like battle plans. "The next major storm will flood this neighborhood worse than Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans." The computer models were terrifying in their precision. Rex remembered from his water management days that wetlands functioned like enormous sponges. They absorbed stormwater the same way a kitchen sponge soaks up spilled coffee. Destroy the sponge and the coffee floods your entire counter. Cordelia's Road had eliminated 40 acres of natural flood protection right before storm season. Based on historical storm data, any rainfall over 4 in 12 hours will flood 23 homes on the lower streets. Dr. Webb explained, pointing to red zones on his computer model. Cordelia's house sits right in the center of the projected flood zone. The irony was delicious enough to serve at Sunday dinner. They spent the next 2 hours installing stream gauges and precipitation measurement equipment throughout the neighborhood, working with the methodical precision of scientists preparing for the experiment of a lifetime. Rex's engineering background had taught him that courts loved precise data more than emotional appeals. Numbers didn't lie, unlike certain HOA board chairwomen. The technical education campaign began Friday morning at Murphy's Diner, where Rex organized an informal coffee chat that felt more like an environmental science seminar. The diner's checkered linoleum floors and fluorescent lighting created an oddly appropriate classroom for suburban environmental education. "Think of wetlands like giant underground storage tanks," Rex explained to 8 concerned residents. Gathered around mismatched tables, they absorb floodwater the same way your basement sump pump prevents flooding. Destroy the wetlands. You eliminate your flood protection and turn your subdivision into a swimming pool during the next big storm. Mrs. Henderson leaned forward, clutching her coffee mug like a lifeline while the morning sunlight streamed through grease-stained windows. "So, this road could actually flood our homes." "It's not could, it's when," Dr. Webb confirmed grimly. The next major storm will test Cordelia's engineering decisions in the most expensive way possible. Rex watched minds change in real time as parents calculated potential flood damage against temporary traffic convenience. Money talked, but the threat of losing everything screamed louder than a smoke detector at 3 a.m. Saturday brought media reinforcements when investigative reporter Sarah Presley from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution arrived with the enthusiasm of a journalist who'd smelled a Pulitzer Prize brewing. The woman's energy could have powered a small city as she reviewed Rex's evidence files. "This story has everything," Sarah said, her pen moving faster than Cordelia's bulldozers. Environmental crime, federal investigation, HOA corruption, endangered species. It's like Netflix ordered a documentary about suburban environmental warfare. Rex's financial research revealed Cordelia's desperation ran deeper than environmental violations. Blackthorn Construction owed $180,000 in contractor liens on other projects, with the company rushing this road project to generate cash flow for bankruptcy payments. Cordelia had personally guaranteed business loans that put her $780,000 house at risk. She was gambling everything on completing this environmental crime. Sunday's weather update made Rex's pulse quicken like a thoroughbred at the starting gate. The National Weather Service had upgraded weekend forecast to include tropical storm remnants, bringing 6 to 8 inches of rainfall in 12 hours. Exactly the kind of precipitation event that would test destroyed wetlands in the most dramatic way possible. As Rex calibrated his final monitoring equipment, he reflected on the beautiful irony developing. Cordelia had rushed construction to beat federal oversight, but Mother Nature was about to provide the most compelling environmental impact study ever conducted. Live in high definition with her neighbor's basement as the laboratory. Monday morning brought the news that made Rex's coffee taste like victory mixed with dread. Attorney Samantha Hartwell called with an update that changed the game's tempo from chess to speed racing. Federal injunction hearing is scheduled for next Monday. She announced, her voice carrying the electricity of impending legal warfare. But Rex, I'm hearing through courthouse gossip that Cordelia's learned about it. She's accelerating construction to complete the road before the hearing. Rex peered through his kitchen window to see proof of Samantha's intelligence. Blackthorn Construction had tripled their workforce overnight. The wetlands now swarmed with equipment like mechanical ants devouring a sugar cube. The acrid smell of diesel exhaust and concrete dust hung in the morning air, thick enough to taste. Cordelia had declared total war on federal environmental law, and she was winning through sheer audacity. The first salvo in her counteroffensive arrived Tuesday morning via Rex's doormat, another stack of HOA violation notices that made his previous citations look like parking tickets. Unauthorized environmental monitoring equipment detected on common areas. Immediate removal required. Apparently his stream gauges violated some obscure covenant about aesthetic disruption. Wednesday brought escalated psychological warfare when Rex discovered his trail cameras had been systematically sabotaged. Every single unit showed severed power cables and missing memory cards. Someone had conducted a precision strike against his surveillance network with military efficiency. The anonymous note tucked under his windshield wiper delivered the message with crystal clarity. Environmental terrorists aren't welcome here. Leave before you regret staying. Rex felt a chill that had nothing to do with Georgia weather patterns. Cordelia had moved beyond bureaucratic harassment into territory that flirted with criminal intimidation. The woman was clearly desperate enough to play extremely dangerous games. Thursday's morning routine included discovering his car tires had been slashed sometime during the night. 4 perfectly clean cuts that screamed professional vandalism rather than random mischief. Rex photographed the damage while calculating whether his insurance covered environmental activism-related vehicle sabotage. But Cordelia's most effective weapon remained her propaganda machine. She'd spent the week working neighborhood phones like a campaign manager before Election Day, and the results showed in Friday's emergency HOA meeting atmosphere. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face an unprecedented attack on our community," Cordelia announced to a packed conference room that buzzed with nervous energy. "Mr. Thornfield's harassment campaign has escalated beyond reasonable bounds. He's filing frivolous federal lawsuits designed to bankrupt our neighborhood while secretly recording residents without consent." The room's temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees as neighbors turned to stare at Rex like he'd been caught selling drugs to kindergartners. Cordelia had masterfully reframed his environmental documentation as stalking behavior and his legal actions as financial terrorism. "Our community faces potential legal costs exceeding $500,000 if these baseless environmental allegations proceed." Cordelia continued producing documents that looked professionally prepared by expensive attorneys. "I'm forced to recommend immediate legal action against Mr. Thornfield for tortious interference with community business." Rex realized Cordelia was attempting to bury him under legal fees while positioning herself as the neighborhood's financial protector. The woman understood psychological warfare better than most military strategists. That's when Rex made the first move Cordelia never saw coming. Using his divorce settlement and $200,000 from Emma's college fund, money he'd been saving for environmental protection projects, Rex quietly purchased all of Blackthorn Construction's outstanding debt from 3 different banks. The beauty of bankruptcy law was that debt holders could force immediate liquidation. Rex now owned $180,000 in contractor liens, business loans, and equipment financing that Cordelia's husband had personally guaranteed. One phone call to their bankruptcy attorney delivered his message: "Construction stops immediately or I foreclose tomorrow." Rex smiled, remembering Emma's tears. Sometimes protecting children required playing by adult rules that had nothing to do with being nice. Meanwhile, Rex's silent preparation continued with the methodical precision of someone expecting Armageddon. He'd replaced his sabotage surveillance equipment with hidden military-grade cameras borrowed from Dr. Webb's geological survey work. The new units were virtually invisible and transmitted data wirelessly to cloud storage that Cordelia's minions couldn't physically destroy. His partnership with Dr. Webb had evolved into something resembling a scientific resistance movement. They'd installed underground water sensors throughout the neighborhood, using techniques Webb had perfected during earthquake monitoring projects. Their flood prediction network now rivaled National Weather Service capabilities for local precision. The construction completion timeline had accelerated to breakneck speed that defied both physics and environmental law. Cordelia's crews were working 247 shifts, pouring concrete under floodlights while most neighbors slept peacefully in beds that might soon require flood insurance. Rex's hidden cameras captured environmental violations that would make federal prosecutors practically giddy. Direct concrete pours into endangered salamander pools. Construction equipment dumping contaminated soil directly into storm drains leading to Millbrook Creek. Chemical runoff flowing unchecked into downstream residential water supplies. Friday night brought the weather update that made Rex's engineering calculations feel prophetic. Tropical storm Helena had strengthened to Category 1 hurricane status with landfall predicted for Saturday night, 180 miles south of Millbrook County. The storm's northern bands would deliver exactly the precipitation levels Rex's models had identified as catastrophic for destroyed wetlands. But Cordelia's most desperate gamble was also her most revealing. Rex's surveillance network captured her husband's construction crew dumping industrial chemicals directly into storm drains Friday after midnight. Evidence of environmental crimes that crossed the line from civil violations into federal felony territory. Saturday morning dawned with the metallic taste of approaching storms and the mechanical rumble of construction equipment racing against meteorological deadlines. Cordelia's road project was 90% complete, but Mother Nature's audit was about to begin. Friday night arrived with Hurricane Helena bearing down on Georgia like nature's own collection agency, and Rex's weather station registered the first drops of what meteorologists were calling a once-in-a-generation precipitation event. The air pressure had dropped so dramatically that Rex's ears popped just walking to his mailbox. A sure sign that atmospheric hell was about to break loose. By 11 p.m., Helena made landfall 200 meters south, with the fury of a Category 1 hurricane that had spent weeks gathering moisture over the Gulf of Mexico. Rex watched radar imagery on his laptop, while rain began pelting his windows with the intensity of machine gun fire. His automated monitoring equipment hummed to life as the storm's northern bands reached Millbrook County. The first two Inez fell by midnight, and Rex's real-time flood sensors detected something terrifying. Water was already backing up behind Cordelia's road embankment, instead of flowing through the destroyed wetlands. His engineering calculations were proving themselves with the precision of a Swiss watch and the destructive power of a demolition crew. At 2 a.m., Rex's phone buzzed with the first emergency call. Rex, this is Martha Henderson on Pine Street. We've got water coming into our basement. Is this normal? Rex checked his flood monitoring dashboard and felt his stomach drop like a stone through honey. The natural drainage that should have absorbed Helena's rainfall had been replaced by concrete that channeled everything toward expensive homes like a funnel directing water into a shot glass. It's going to get worse, Martha. Move valuable items to your second floor immediately. By 3 a.m., Rex's phone was ringing constantly as the mathematical precision of environmental disaster unfolded exactly as his models had predicted. The metallic taste of adrenaline filled his mouth as he documented each flooded basement, cross-referencing water levels with GPS coordinates and timestamps that would make federal prosecutors practically dance with joy. Pine Street flooded first, the houses closest to Cordelia's artificial dam. Maple Avenue followed 30 minutes later as backed-up stormwater found new routes through subdivisions never designed for wetland-level flooding. The acrid smell of electrical systems shutting down began drifting through the neighborhood like industrial incense. Rex's hidden cameras captured the disaster in real-time high definition, water pouring around Cordelia's road foundation like liquid seeking justice. Basements filling faster than sump pumps could handle. Expensive cars floating in garages like bathtub toys abandoned by giant children. At 4:30 a.m., his phone rang with the call he'd been simultaneously expecting and dreading. "Rex, this is Cordelia. You have to fix this environmental disaster immediately." The woman's voice carried none of its usual commanding authority. Instead, she sounded like someone watching their life savings flood away in real time. Rex calmly checked his monitoring data and confirmed what his engineering training had predicted. "Cordelia, the wetlands you destroyed would have absorbed all this water naturally. Your road created an artificial dam that's flooding the neighborhood. I don't care about technical explanations. People are losing their homes." Rex felt the irony settle over him like warm honey. Maybe you should have considered that before bulldozing through federal environmental law. The line went dead, but Rex knew the conversation was far from over. Cordelia's house sat directly in the center of his predicted flood zone. If his calculations were correct, her $780,000 colonial would start taking on water within the hour. By dawn Saturday, the scope of environmental justice had revealed itself with biblical precision. 23 homes reported basement flooding exactly matching Dr. Webb's hydrological models. Rex's house, built to respect natural drainage patterns, remained completely dry while his neighbors dealt with the wet consequences of environmental arrogance. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Sarah Presley arrived by 7 a.m., driving through flooded streets while live streaming video that would make national environmental news within hours. Rex provided expert commentary for her audience while carefully documenting the connection between destroyed wetlands and neighborhood flooding. "This is unprecedented flooding for this rainfall amount," confirmed the National Weather Service meteorologist during Sarah's live broadcast. "The natural flood absorption capacity appears to have been significantly compromised." Sure. Rex's EPA contact arrived Saturday afternoon with water sampling equipment that detected construction chemical contamination exceeding drinking water standards by 300%. The evidence showed environmental violations had created not just flooding but toxic flooding that threatened public health. Insurance adjusters began arriving Sunday morning with expressions like undertakers measuring coffins. Flood damage estimates quickly climbed toward 2.80 cents, $8 million across 23 homes. But the real nightmare was just beginning. Insurance companies were investigating man-made flood exclusion clauses that could deny coverage for disasters caused by illegal construction. Cordelia's world collapsed as methodically as her illegal road had been built. Her house suffered $180,000 in flood damage. Blackthorn construction equipment sat half submerged in contaminated floodwater, destroyed by the same environmental destruction it had created. Personal bankruptcy became inevitable as business loan guarantees collided with flood damage and federal criminal liability. Rex spent Saturday and Sunday refusing media interviews that might have seemed vindictive. Instead, he focused his message on environmental law's practical purpose. Federal wetlands protection exists because Mother Nature always collects on unpaid environmental bills, with interest compounded by flood damage. Sunday evening brought the sound of industrial fans and dehumidifiers humming throughout the neighborhood, like mechanical morning songs for environmental arrogance. Rex sat on his dry back porch listening to the restoration efforts and calculating federal criminal penalties for environmental destruction. The sweet smell of Emma's favorite wildflowers, somehow still blooming in his untouched yard, reminded him why some battles were worth fighting, even against impossible odds. Monday morning's federal court hearing felt like Environmental Judgment Day, with U.S. District Judge Patricia Hamilton presiding over what had become the most documented environmental crime in Millbrook County history. The courtroom packed tighter than a rush-hour subway car. Affected neighbors, media crews, EPA officials, and FBI environmental crimes investigators all crammed into wooden pews that creaked under the weight of impending justice. Rex took the witness stand, wearing his best engineer's demeanor and carrying 3 folders of evidence that could have stopped a freight train. The smell of wet drywall from flooded homes had somehow followed everyone into the courthouse, a pungent reminder of environmental consequences that lingered like guilty consciences. Mr. Thornfield, please explain to the court how this weekend's flooding relates to the defendant's construction project, Judge Hamilton requested, her wire-rimmed glasses reflecting the fluorescent lighting like legal laser beams. Rex spread his GPS-coordinated flood documentation across the witness table like a card dealer revealing a royal flush. Your Honor, federal wetlands function as natural flood control systems, bar. When Cordelia Blackthorne's crews destroyed 40 acres of protected habitat, they eliminated the neighborhood's natural drainage capacity. Saturday's flooding was as predictable as gravity. His computer models displayed on the courtroom's projection screen with the precision of surgical instruments. Every flooded basement corresponded exactly to his pre-storm calculations, proving cause and effect with mathematical certainty that made environmental lawyers practically purr with satisfaction. Cordelia sat at the defendant's table looking like someone who'd aged 10 years over one weekend. Her water-damaged designer suit and hollow-eyed expression suggested a woman watching her empire crumble in real-time legal proceedings. The metallic clicking of her nervous pen tapping echoed through the courthouse like a countdown timer. Mrs. Blackthorne's attorney claims this project was completed in good faith reliance on local permits, Judge Hamilton noted, shuffling through legal briefs thick enough to stop bullets. Rex's attorney, Samantha Hartwell, stood with the confidence of someone holding 4 aces and a royal flush simultaneously. Your Honor, federal environmental law doesn't recognize good faith violations of the Clean Water Act. Mrs. Blackthorne ignored required permitting processes and destroyed protected habitat to avoid federal oversight. The courtroom's tension ratcheted higher when Judge Hamilton addressed the elephant sitting in the legal room. Counselor, I'm reviewing allegations that this entire construction project violated a permanent conservation easement dating to 1987. How does your client respond to claims that every property deed in this subdivision might be legally invalid? Cordelia's attorney looked like a man who just discovered his parachute was actually a backpack full of concrete. Your Honor, we have no knowledge of any such easement restrictions. Rex felt the moment crystallize like perfect engineering calculations. Judge Hamilton called a 30-minute recess to review conservation easement documentation, and the courtroom erupted into nervous whispers that sounded like escaping steam from a pressure cooker about to explode. Outside the courthouse, Sarah Presley Live tweeted legal developments to 50,000 followers while local TV crews set up equipment for what had become regional environmental news. Rex's story was spreading across social media faster than floodwater through destroyed wetlands. When court reconvened, Rex's attorney delivered the legal equivalent of a nuclear weapon. Your Honor, we present the 1987 Master Deed establishing permanent conservation easement with the Georgia Nature Conservancy. This document legally prohibits any development in the exact area where Mrs. Blackthorn's road now sits. The easement violation potentially voids all 127 property deeds in Pristine Meadows subdivision. The courtroom fell silent, except for the sound of Cordelia's sharp intake of breath and the mechanical hum of court reporter equipment documenting legal history. Rex watched color drain from faces throughout the gallery as neighbors realized their homes might be legally worthless. Judge Hamilton reviewed the easement documentation with the methodical precision of someone handling unexploded ordnance. Mrs. Blackthorn, did your environmental consultants review this conservation easement before construction began? Cordelia's voice cracked like thin ice under pressure. Our consultants were Blackthorn Environmental Services, assured us of full compliance with applicable regulations. Your husband's company surveyed itself for environmental compliance. Judge Hamilton's eyebrows rose toward her judicial hairline and somehow missed a recorded conservation easement. The EPA announced its decision during the afternoon session: immediate criminal investigation into environmental violations with potential charges including conspiracy, environmental destruction, and obstruction of federal oversight. Cordelia and her husband faced up to $500,000 in fines, plus 5 years federal prison time. Rex's vindication arrived with the judge's final ruling. This court orders immediate cessation of all activity on the disputed property pending resolution of conservation easement violation. The defendant's flagrant disregard for federal environmental law resulted in precisely the flooding damage that wetlands protection was designed to prevent. Rex exited the courthouse to supportive neighbors and media attention that felt surreal after months of fighting alone. Gladys Peton publicly apologized for not supporting him earlier, while Dr. Webb announced the formation of a neighborhood environmental restoration fund. The metallic taste of victory mixed with relief as Rex realized he'd won more than a legal battle. He'd proven that environmental law served practical purposes beyond protecting salamanders. Federal protection existed because Mother Nature operated by non-negotiable physical laws that didn't care about political convenience or construction deadlines. But the sweetest victory would come later, when he could tell Emma that her turtle friends would be safe forever, and the mean lady's house would become their new hospital. 6 months later, Rex stood in the restored wetlands breathing air that smelled like victory, mixed with native wild flowers instead of diesel fumes and regret. The $800,000 federal restoration grant had worked environmental magic. Cordelia's concrete road had been completely removed, replaced by meandering boardwalks that respected natural drainage patterns, like civilized people respected property boundaries. The endangered spotted salamanders had returned to their ancestral breeding pools with the enthusiasm of college students discovering free pizza. Rex's morning walks now featured the cheerful plop of turtles diving for cover and the liquid notes of red-winged blackbirds nesting in restored cattail marshes. Emma squealed with delight during their weekend visits, counting 17 new turtles that had emerged from wherever turtles hide during construction nightmares. "Daddy, you kept your promise," she announced while photographing a great blue heron with her new wildlife camera. "The animals are safe forever now." Cordelia's legal saga had concluded with the satisfying precision of environmental justice. She'd pleaded guilty to federal environmental crimes, receiving 18 months probation and community service hours that ironically involved wetlands restoration work. Her husband served 6 months in federal prison for conspiracy and fraud charges, with $350,000 in fines paid through the forced sale of their water-damaged colonial. 6 months after Cordelia's bankruptcy, her $780,000 colonial went up for auction. Rex bought it for $320,000. Using money he'd recovered from Blackthorn Construction's liquidation, plus the satisfaction of knowing karma had an excellent sense of timing, the house became Emma's Wildlife Rescue Center, a free sanctuary where neighborhood children could learn about wetlands conservation. The bronze plaque by the front door read, "Cordelia Blackthorn and descendants banned from premises in perpetuity. Environmental crimes have consequences." Emma's favorite addition was the turtle hospital in what used to be Cordelia's master bedroom. "The mean lady's house is helping animals now, Daddy," she said while bottle feeding an orphaned raccoon. "The turtles forgive her, but I don't have to." Rex watched his daughter nurturing wildlife in the same room where Cordelia had once planned environmental destruction. Emma had taught him that some promises to children were worth breaking a few adult rules to keep. The Blackthorn Construction bankruptcy had provided unexpected benefits for the neighborhood. Federal disaster assistance covered flood repairs, while insurance companies eventually settled claims after the new HOA board was elected and environmental compliance achieved. Property values had actually increased 18% once the environmental violations were resolved and natural flood protection restored. Rex's personal transformation had surprised him more than anyone. His expertise in environmental crisis management led to marriage with Dr. Sarah Clearwater, the EPA inspector who'd become his strongest professional ally and eventually his life partner. Their combined environmental consulting business, Wetlands and Watersheds, now helped communities across the Southeast navigate federal environmental compliance before disasters struck. The conservation easement crisis had resolved through careful negotiation with the Georgia Nature Conservancy. The organization agreed to modified easement terms that preserved core wetlands while allowing the neighborhood to retain property ownership under enhanced environmental protections. Monthly HOA fees dropped 45% after eliminating development projects that violated federal law. Rex's transformation of HOA governance had become a model for environmental compliance nationwide. His online course, Environmental Law for Community Leaders, had been downloaded over 150,000 times, teaching homeowners to research conservation easements and environmental restrictions before purchasing property. Every buyer should understand what environmental laws protect their investment. The pristine Meadows Environmental Education Center now operated year-round in the restored wetlands, offering school field trips and adult education programs that drew visitors from across Georgia. Rex particularly enjoyed leading tours for other HOA boards facing environmental challenges